Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Henrik Bick. I'm here with the communications team at the Music Business Association. Hope everyone's doing well today, and thank you for tuning into our Common Ground webinar series. Before we get started with today's presentation, I do have a couple of quick housekeeping notes to share with you about the presentation itself and some other stuff coming down the road for Music Biz. Most importantly, for today's session, in order to connect with one another, change your chat settings to everyone, so that way you can network and get to know your fellow attendees. And we'll also be taking questions at the end of the webinar today. If anything comes up that piques your interest and you want more information on, be sure to drop your questions in the dedicated Q&A box on your Zoom dashboard. And like I said, we'll be answering them at the conclusion of today's session. Outside of the webinar realm for a second, there's only 2 weeks left for you to submit your ideas for the call for presentations for Music Biz 2023. That'll be happening May 15th to the 18th, 2023 at the JW Marriott Nashville. This is your chance to help kind of guide the conversations of what will be topical and we should be focusing on both in a business capacity and also how our workers are treated and how we can become an equitable and more accepting industry this year and beyond. So be sure to put your best ideas out in the call for presentations. Again, that closes on Wednesday, December 7th. You can visit our website, musicbiz.org or musicbiz2023.com for that and more about the event. That includes registration, early schedule details, our tutorial on how to attend Music Biz if you've never been or if you need a refresher, all sorts of things like that. It also includes information on our 2023 edition of the Busy Awards. This is our newly revamped awards program that has a philanthropic angle, looking at the good works that our industry's companies and workers do to, again, better improve the industry and how we work and how we treat one another. Those nominations close on February 28th, so be sure to once again visit musicbiz2023.com to learn more about that initiative and to submit your peers for nomination for those awards. When you visit our website, musicbiz.org, you'll also see on the homepage our latest Keeping Tempo interview with Chelsea Hallman over at member company Targo's Market Research. She did an awesome op-ed for us for that series. And also you'll see recordings of our first 3 of 4 parts in a series with Sound Exchange about the changing economy of music and how artists are implementing new tools in order to bolster revenue and better connect with their fans. We just had our 3rd event on Tuesday, the 15th, and that recording is available to you now on our website as well. So that's musicbiz.org. Be sure to also follow us on all socials at MusicBizAssoc. Right now, we're on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram for all of that as well. You'll be getting live updates through those mediums as well. Finally, back in the realm of webinars, we did just announce a new addition to our fall series on Tuesday, November 29th. That's different from our normal Thursday time slot. Amazon Music for Artists will be showcasing some new products that will help artists print merch on demand and also create an all-in-one digital and physical marketplace for folks to come and purchase music, purchase merch, and stream their music on Amazon. So really exciting developments over there. We're excited to help showcase these new initiatives from them. And that's the 29th of November. Like all our webinars, it's free to attend. This one will not be recorded, however. So be sure if you're attending on the 29th to attend that live. But now back to today's session, we're more than thrilled to welcome Muso.AI, Muso.AI for today's presenter. And the co-founder of the company, Kyran de Keijzer, is here today to speak with us. Kyran, thank you so much for taking time out of your day.
Hey, Henrik, thank you very much. And thank you for all the people that have joined here today. Like Henrik said, I am Kyran de Keijzer, one of the co-founders of Muso.AI, the verified music credits platform. And I want to share with you guys today how we're leveraging streaming analytics to help solve the industry's credit problem. This is not something that we saw ourselves do through analytics in the beginning, but this is something that we've discovered in the last 2 years that could actually be a very scalable way in solving legacy credits and also new credits going forward. So before I dive deeper into how we do that, I want to give a little bit of the backstory of how we came to be. Muso.AI is about 5.5, coming on to 6 years old. We were started in the recording studio. I'm an engineer, and I started working in the NRG recording studios in North Hollywood. And then together with the owner of that studio, Jay Baumgartner, we saw very many conversations happening between colleagues, friends, customers, and basically people coming through the studio about credits not being accurate, about people not having a proper resume to share with other folks when they want to get hired. Even to the point of people getting very emotional on our couches of not being credited, missing out on Grammy opportunities. And it came to be that even at what I assume was the highest level, working with or in the sessions with people like Beyonce, Linkin Park, and the Papa Roach, very high profile artists coming through that studio, that even if you're working in that environment, credits are not properly done. And that was kind of astounding to me, that even at the top of the top, there was no real solution or no real way to properly capture credits going forward while you're working on stuff, but also to fix a lot of the legacy stuff that has not been properly captured at all. So we've collected all the biggest pain points from people coming through the studio, and we've, at the very first, we saw that the main problem was that we're not capturing credits at the time of creation. We are doing this at the time of when we're ready to send it to the streaming services. So what used to happen is we would have a session come in, and then 7 months later, they would ask us, okay, who was in the room, who was involved, who are the producers, who are the engineers? And we used to have 2 or 3 sessions a day, and it's very hard to kind of think back 7 months, 6 months into who was involved. So the very first iteration of our platform, like of our product 5 years ago, was an app, and it was a very simple tool to try and help people to capture credits while they're in the studio, while they're in the session. And what we've noticed is that the sessions are pretty chaotic, and it's hard to insert something that feels like admin work into a normal creative process. We also had the feedback from people that credits going forward, and this was back in 2017 or 2018, it's not as bad as it used to be. This is when also Spotify rolled out some of the features of having producers and songwriting credits inside of Spotify. So this kind of started to become the new norm of making sure that when you send something out to the DSP, that you have at least some credits, not all of them, but some credits there. So people felt like going forward, it wasn't actually that bad. The main and biggest problem was all the legacy data that hasn't been properly captured, people that can't share the work they've done for 10 or 15 years just because there's no record of it. And then the last thing that we've seen is because people because the independent market is growing at such a large rate, the barrier to entry of actually sending something to a DSP is very low. The chances are that you're working with so many different artists who all have different tools, and there was no universal way to make sure that it was sent to the streaming services in the proper way. Some independents are going to use something like DistroKid or TuneCore. Some engineers or songwriters, they will work with an artist who is with a label with a very big distributor. So it wasn't all one unified way to actually handle it. So the very first version of Muso was just a simple way, capture all of it, and then send it to the label to then hopefully be properly distributed to the DSPs. But we found quite a lot of pushback on that, both from the users using it, but also from the labels and the distributors trying to adopt this. Where we moved this into the current platform is we said, okay, let's not really focus on new credits going forward. That seems to be happening quite okay. Let's look at how we can solve all of the legacy catalog stuff. And that means as soon as something is on a streaming service, so say that it comes out today, we classify that as legacy. And now we were to bring it into our system where users can make changes to it. So we've identified many different sources on the credits, analytics, catalog side, publishing side, and have done quite a lot of effort over the last 3 years to bring all of that together into one master set that we call the industry data. And then the idea is that users can make changes or can validate the information inside of that industry data. And once those changes and validations have been made, that data can be shared with data customers that we have through our API or through a data feed. Now, a lot of work is done on our end, just on the aggregation and the bringing together of all of this information. But where really the big opportunity lies is where the users come into the platform and they start to contribute to the industry data. So we're kind of holding up a mirror saying, hey guys, this is all the credits, the analytics, and the publishing and the catalog data that is out there. This is the current state of it. We've done a little bit of work there, but really the user is going the extra mile to fix it and to contribute to it. And that last piece, that's what we've really been focusing on this last year. And the analytical piece of bringing all of this in has been the main driver of user contribution and user changes to the industry master data. We've seen in the last year 1.4 million changes happening on the industry data of missing credits, of duplicate profiles, of some misspellings of any of the credits. And we've seen cleanup and changes not having to happen by hand, but can be done by the community in a validated way. And how we can achieve that through the analytics, that is what I want to talk to you today. Before I go through what the user sees, what the user goes through coming through our platform, the whole onboarding flow, I would like to show you some of the data that somebody can see once all of their credits and everything is cleaned up, and the analytics they get to see that is making them doing all these changes. So here for my partner, Jay, we have his profile and all of the credits he has about 900 something of all of his credits. And this is one type of the aggregation that what we do is we've merged quite a few profiles for him, brought it all together. But this is one page that has everything for him, his life's work, and there's no need to look at anywhere else for his work. Now, we take all of these credits and we then cross-reference it to what we have as the analytical database. And on the analytical database, we have a few different categories. We have streaming, we have Shazams, we have TikTok views, we have playlist reach, which is the amount of followers that a playlist has. It can have 1 million followers or just 100, because it shows you the reach that the playlist has, the amount of playlists and the amount of charts that Jay's body of work as an engineer, as a producer, as a songwriter has created in his whole lifetime. Now, we are one of the few, or dare I say, one of the only platforms that is able to bring that credit data and the analytical data together to give insights to people behind the scenes like Jay to see all of this information. Now, we have some of the role breakdowns here, so he would be able to see his engineering credits versus his mixing credits, some breakdown. We can change some of the time periods here to look at the last 3 months. For example, we would be able to go deeper into the streaming stuff that is done on his body of work, on his catalog, filter out some of the sources if we want to, filter out some of the tracks if we want to. We can move into some of the other data points like the Shazams, which is kind of interesting for an engineer, and also the TikTok views, which can also be kind of interesting, seeing where things are spiking and where things are happening. On top of that, we have a long list of what his catalog looks like, sorted by the streaming over the last 3 months. And he can, if he wants, even break this down by credit. So his mixing credits are bringing together 331 million streams over the last 3 months. So these are just some examples of the insights that Jay would be able to get through our platform. And also the reason why we are seeing a lot of changes inside of his credits while he was on our platform that we are ultimately pushing for and wanting to share with the industry. So a user journey, how this typically works, and I'm going to take an example that happened just 2 weeks ago, as it's kind of fresh. Somebody will see what you can see here is somebody else sharing their analytics on Instagram, on Twitter, on TikTok, is we've made it very easy for our users inside of the app to share their lifetime streams to social media. And this has been the main way of kind of us bringing in new users, but also for the individuals to validate themselves in the market, to put a number to their work. They have never seen this number before. They really even had no idea they would have such large streaming numbers, such large Shazam numbers, and them seeing this is really giving that wow moment, that aha moment. And even last year, we've seen that users are creating their own campaigns based on this information. At the end of last year, they all started to kind of share what their 2021 was, kind of an end of year campaign. And they've really they've really responded to this very well, to even sharing it with potential customers hiring them, justifying their rates, and just a great way to validate what they have worked on. So the very first point is the discovery of the brand, which is mainly done through other people sharing their analytics. Next, they would join the platform, they would find themselves. So we have all of this data kind of preceded for them already. In this case, we have Rick Rubin. He finds himself, he can see how many credits he has, how many streams he has, a lifetime or over so many other time periods. He can swipe through to see his TikTok views, his Shazams. This is his first touch point of seeing what we have and what is there. Through this, he is reminded we're just holding up a mirror of what is currently inside of the industry and what that credit data would be aggregated to if we would to do it to the analytics. Now, his goal is he also wants to share this on socials, but he notices that some of the numbers are lower than what he would expect. He knows deep down that he's worked on a few tracks that are pretty big or that are not on this list. And what we typically see is once people see this number, once they see a very nice way to dive into their own credit data, they will very quickly see things that are wrong or see things that are inaccurate, which is really the goal of what we are doing. Is we want to give people tools to solve the inaccuracies inside of the industry data and share that with our data partners. So the first step they do is they add themselves, they view the credits and they view the analytics, they dive in deep, and they will most likely find some things that are not quite accurate or some things that are very, very wrong. And we help them, give them the tools to solve these things. Now, some of the things that might be wrong that I want to share today, there's 7 that are like the most common things that we've seen, and I see this almost on every single profile that is out there, and give you some examples of how bad these may be and how they can be solved. So the first one is merging duplicated profiles. The second one is we can have some professional credits on an artist. This can be songwriting credits, producer credits on like a group. Split profiles, a wrong credit was added. We can add missing credits, there can be incorrect naming, and the different track versioning. Before that, anybody can make changes to any profile inside of the system. They have to claim their profile. They have to prove that they have access to this profile or artist in order to make changes. And we do this very similar to how Spotify does it, how Shazam does it, is they will choose any single profile that we have in our database, and they will link their Facebook page, their Instagram page, or their Twitter page to prove that they indeed have access to this profile to make changes. We process that request. Once approved, they can actually make changes and just to ensure that nobody comes on board and says they're Justin Bieber and starts like changing everything. We've had a few people saying they're Kanye West. Well, they weren't really Kanye West, but this is just one of the ways that we kind of gatekeep as to who can actually make changes to themselves, and also verify that some of the data coming in is made by the real person. So going into the first problem that we see is merging the duplicated profiles. Now, this happens more than any other error that we might see, and it happens a lot. This is the first step that we typically take in solving a user's data. They will request all these profiles to be merged together, and we will help them through those steps. So this is something that happened about 2 weeks ago. Timbaland, which probably most of you know, and these are just some of the variations on screen that we were able to find. There's a total of 37 naming variations of this one person. You can see some Tim Mosley, that is his real legal name, T. Mosley, Timbaland, some misspellings. And so we just in the industry data, there's so many duplicates on one single profile that it's hard to bring it all together. And what we help them do is identify all of them, merge all of them, and in some cases even split them if needed to make sure that all the right credits are in one single profile, like what you saw with Jay, and then run the analytics for that one profile. So the reason why this happens is over the years, and this kind of still happens to this day, distributors, publishers, labels, they don't have an identifier for the individual contributing to the track. So they'll say name is Timbaland, credit is the producer. Now with Timbaland, that can be kind of okay, but as you saw, that can still lead to a bunch of different naming variations. But if you were to say John Smith, producer, John Smith, songwriter, it would be very hard for the DSP or for whoever to disambiguate those profiles. So what we need to start having to do is add identifiers on the submission so that we can actually that we can properly disambiguate profiles. But since that is not the case, we have to disambiguate and split it on our end to make sure that we have accurate credits. Now, some of the cases that we might see is we have the same name, but there are misspellings or they're just not properly taken in. So we see Timbaland, Timbaland period, Timbaland for Timbaland Productions Inc., and Timberland, just a misspelling. Now those are like pretty easily identifiable, and those can be merged on our end. The next one are pseudonyms with a real legal name. So his real legal name is Tim Mosley. Well, that could also be Timothy Mosley or Tim in quotations mark Timbaland, Timbaland Mosley. Then we also see abbreviated names, so T. Mosley. This mainly happens in the publishing data, in the songwriting data, that it's always abbreviated, and there's even some cases of merged profiles. So we have Timbaland featuring one or Republic. This is also a submission error, and we then have to split those on our side, but we help him along the way, and we help him identify those things. So really, because Timbaland came on, he wanted to see his analytics, and in that journey we've been able to clean up these 37 profiles, split them properly, and make sure we only have one represented profile for Timbaland with his whole body of work. The second error that we always see is that professional credits are done on the artist side, and what this means is we might have an artist like Papa Roach who has a producer credit or has a composer credit. Well, this is technically not accurate because we want the members of Papa Roach, the members of the artist group, to inherit those credits and not be credited as, especially if we go into the composer, the songwriting credits. We want this to be on the legal names of people that have the copyright, of people that contributed to the musical work. And in this case, it is not. We cannot have correct credits if we do this on the artist level. Now, what we do is we help people claim that artist, and then we add the right members to that artist. So those credits will be inherited down to the members, and that we have clean credits also there. This also means that in this case, Jacoby, he was not credited as a songwriter for that track. So when he joined and when we saw his analytics, he was not seeing that track. So this led him to kind of want to solve this for himself. And thus he cleaned up all these credits on the artist side. The third one, splitting profiles. What we refer to internally as the Andrea Roberts problem. We have an engineer at the studio called Andrea Roberts, and this is a pretty common name. And what we've seen is she started working as an engineer in 2014, but all of her credits are merged on the same profile as somebody that passed away in 2004. And this a lady that was also called Andrea Roberts was mainly credited as a saxophone player on some country music or on some tracks from the 1970s, from the 1980s. And the new Andrea Roberts that only started working in 2014 is credited as an engineer on hip hop work. So there's two completely different bodies of work merged onto the same profile. In cases of John Smith or some other very common names, we have seen as many as 3, 4, even 5 really different people merged onto the same entity inside of the industry data. Now, we also help the user along this way to split all of that and to make sure that the right credits go to the right profile, and therefore that the right analytics are being shown. Number 4, the wrong credit was added. This is can happen. They say that she was an engineer, but really she did recording. Can be a co-producer versus a normal producer. It can be you were labeled as brass, but really it's something more like trumpet. And so sometimes these are just naming conventions. Sometimes it's just the wrong credit completely. So we will be, or we in that case are able to change the credit for that profile on the same track. Lastly, the adding of missing credits. Now, there's a whole bunch of credits that are not on any of the sources that we bring in, that are not on the industry data, and the user will be able to submit any of these and say that they have indeed worked on that. Those requests go into a pending state until they're responded or verified by another party, and those pending credits are not taking into their final analytical calculation. They have to be verified. They have to be approved before their analytical number goes up. So these first 5, these are the steps that the user typically initiates, typically leads in order to get their analytics accurate to share on socials. Number 6 and number 7, this is something that we kind of do behind the scenes on our end, but it does help getting everything accurate to for the user to share and to get the insights that they want. So the first one is the incorrect naming conventions. Now, we have many different variations of a single credit that can exist. Just for the mixing engineer, there's 33 different naming conventions that we've seen in the industry data: mixing engineer, mixed by, mixer, vocal mixing, digital mixing, like all these different variations. And that doesn't make it very easy to do analyticals, to do analytics on, to do reporting on, to do filtering on. It's very difficult if you have all these different possible mappings to have proper insights from. So what we've done is we've mapped about 5,000 credits to 149. So we've unified all of them, as you can see here on the right. So we've taken vocal mixing, we've given it a parent called engineer, a child called mixing, and then the classification is vocal. So this way we will still be able to search through the entire industry DB for a mixing engineer and find this profile, whereas before that would not be possible. This is also needed if you want to compare yourself as a mixing engineer to another mixing engineer. The data has to be unified in order to do comparisons by. And then lastly, the different track versioning. Now, this is something that really bothers me quite a bunch, and I don't know why this happens, but it happens quite a lot. We might have one track that is called waves. We have the original, we can have the radio edit, and we can have the extended version. Now, all 3, you would think they are the same exact audio. It was the same people in the room, and everybody should have the same credits on that track. In fact, that's not really the case. The original may have 10 credits, the radio edit only 1, and then the Waves extended version has 7. So they're not really unified. And on the streaming services, they're seen as different tracks with completely different credits, when that should never really be the case. Another problem occurs, say that we were to add credits or solve on the radio edit, those also have to be inherited down to the other tracks. So what we have done is a schema that is similar to this. If you look on the right side, we have 2 different recordings. They're both in the worldwide territory. One is merged into a track that is the radio edit. The other one is merged into a track that is the original. Now, typically, credits are done on the track level. We've moved 1 level above on the master to make sure that the credits are inherited properly down to both the radio edit and the original. The credits we have on the master are the producers, musicians, the engineers, visual, management, organization, and a big group of other. And if any of those change, they're also inherited down to the radio edit and to the original. At the very bottom, you can see the musical work. This is on this record, we store the songwriters and the publishers. Therefore, if we were to change any of the songwriters, publishers, then they can be inherited down to all the derivatives and the original. So it's not needed to do it on the original, it can be done on the derivative, but they are linked in such a way that it's inherited to all the right places. Now, this is not properly done for the entire industry database from the get-go, but in the user journey of getting him from his starting point to his finishing point, we will have helped them do all of this and having his data accurate, and therefore the right insights and the right analytics that he should be having on his catalog. Now, how do we verify all of these transactions and all these things that are happening? This is probably the #1 question that we get, is how can you allow people to make changes to the credits? How can you allow people to make changes to, say, the songwriter data because it impacts the copyright ownership? Well, we have 4 different layers of verification that we have. And our data customers that can get our data through API or the data feed, they can choose to consume any level of that data. The very first one, this is just any user coming on board. They have claimed their own profile and they are now adding to the data. They may say, I have an engineering credit on this track that is currently not there. Okay, that is a 1 level data. The next one, if any of the current collaborators on that same track were to claim the profile, they can approve that. They can essentially vouch for you, bring you onto the track that you weren't properly credited on. On the 3rd level, if the artist comes on board through the artist verification, they can validate the L2 data, bring it up to L3. And then lastly, the rights holder, which in some cases is the artist, but if it's not, then we do the business verification, where the label and or the publisher can come on and vouch for all of these changes that have happened. So some of the data customers might choose to only consume the L4 data. Some are completely fine with consuming the L1 data. Now, we want to make this as transparent as possible. You will very soon start to see these different level of verifications on our platform when you're looking at any type of credit information, so that you get the insights of how you want to trust some of the information that is out there. Some of the case studies that we've seen with correct analytics, and this has been quite eye-opening, is in addition to the analytics, we also create a Spotify playlist for the users. So like in this case, we have a Spotify playlist for Jay Baumgartner. This is completely managed and done by the credits on Muso. So any single time there are changes, this playlist will update, and it is sorted by his most popular all the way down to his least popular. But this has helped individuals, in addition to their analytical numbers, to get paid more for their gigs. There was one story of a user, he got paid 300 per session. Now he gets paid 550 per session, because now on every single new customer that he gets, he shows his analytics, he shares his playlist, he's able to justify where he is in the market. He's able to say, if you work with me, this is the type of success that I have, this is the portfolio of work that I have, and he's now able to share this, whereas before that would be very difficult to do. So they can increase their rates, they can justify themselves in the market, and we've even seen people using some of the information here, my partner Jay included, in reconciling some of this streaming information into the royalty checks that they might get on some of the tracks they have ownership on. And we've seen some reports that people have been able to audit labels or the distributors and get paid 200K, 30K, 15K. So even getting the insights as somebody behind the scenes who normally doesn't get this at all, they are able not to only, not to only see it and, oh, well, that's cool. They're actually able to put it to use and find missing royalties that they're owed to be paid. In the case of Jay, there was one album, and I don't recall which one it was. I think it was this one. Otherwise, that he had worked on some years ago, maybe 9 or 8 years ago. He completely forgot about it. But in Muso, he saw that, oh, well, this is streaming actually very, very high. What is happening? And he reconciled that against his royalties, and he saw indeed he wasn't getting paid what he should have been paid due to now the insights that he has. And we've heard multiple stories of other people that have been able to do the same thing. Lastly, getting notified about opportunities. We've heard several people say they get a notification when some of their tracks are added to charts or added to playlists, and they're also able to leverage this in getting higher rates for their new gigs and just getting hired more and at a higher rate. Then the data partners that we have, as I had said before, we have an API, we have a data feed that the data customers can choose to consume. One of the examples we have is a partnership with engineers, which is a platform where engineers can sign up to be hired. And what better way before you hire somebody on their page is to look at the actual credits they have before you make a decision as a consumer. So this is coming directly from us, and every single time he would make a change on his credits or credits are automatically updated, they will automatically feed into this platform. On top of that, we are one of the only third-party credit providers that are bringing credits to a DSP. We have a partnership with Napster, and we hope to close a lot more in the future. It is our goal to be kind of a source of truth when it comes to the industry data, the credit data, but really seeing where all these changes are happening, where all these transactions are happening, is because of these insights, because of the analytics, because there's a reason to wanting to do this. Prior to us having the analytics, it kind of felt for most users like doing your taxes. It felt a little bit boring. It felt a little bit mundane, but it seems like we have found the reason why people will start to care about the accuracy of their credits, and even more so do quite significant steps into solving all of it. And then lastly, the future improvements. I want to touch a little bit on how we can actually leverage all of these transactions with ML and AI to validate and to kind of scale a lot of the operations that we are doing. For any proper ML or AI system to work, you need to have a set of what you call correct and clean data. And on the industry data, it is almost impossible to run models on that, because you need to be able to say to the model, this is right, this is wrong, this is right, this is wrong. But with the state of the industry data, it's very hard to actually do any of that, to look for improvements and to have models give confidence ratios, because the model simply does not know what is right and what is wrong. So with all the transactions that we've done, the 1.3 last year, and some of the other users saying this is accurate, some of the artists saying this is accurate, some of the collaborators on the track saying yes, this is true, and even in some cases for the rights holders to come in and say yes, this is true. Now we have a bed of what is correct transactional information on credits, ownership, and contribution that we can use to train our models to find these things more on an automatic way, on a way more scalable way, and to help us do all of this industry-wide, even if you're not a user of our platform. But once again, we are leveraging the analytics that we have to create all of these proper transactions, all of this activity that we can learn from to once and for all try to improve or verify the current industry data of credits and ownership. I want to leave it at that. Maybe some room for QA. Thank you all for listening. Let me open up.
And we do also want to say to you, Kyran, thank you so much for taking the time today to showcase the Muso platform and to kind of talk about the mission and the reasons for it existing. It's really exciting stuff. And I can tell from the chat, folks are very excited for what y'all have to offer. We do have a couple of questions that are coming in, and a couple of them we may have answered in this, but we'll go through them. First question here, could issues regarding data being updated be solved at the onset if more writers, producers, and artists begin to use ISNIs? There's talk in the chat about how it's starting to get accepted by outside sources like distributors and DSPs, but that process is still kind of slow. But if it's implemented, if this can be helpful along those lines.
Yep. Absolutely. This is exactly what the ISNI was designed to do, is to disambiguate not only the artist level, but also the individuals behind the scenes. We've seen that maybe it's 20 or 30% coverage currently of the whole kind of industry database of what has an ISNI and what has not. We are an ISNI, a registration agency. So behind the scenes, if we see that you do not have an ISNI, we will create one behind the scenes. And in all the merging and all the things that we do, we make sure that it's all on the one ISNI, so that if one of the data customers wants to get the data from us, it will all be on the right ISNI. That is one, but two, you are right that going forward, once we send stuff to the distributors, and I can maybe pull this slide back up that I had. Let's see, yeah, here. What should be happening, and you're right, is when the distributor, label, publisher, or whoever sends it to a streaming service, there should be an ISNI associated to each and every single one of these individuals. And if you have one, that is great, but you also need buy-in from the people actually sending it. You need buy-in from the distributors. So say you work with TuneCore, Believe, DistroKid, they need a way to do it. I can see it as a few years out, but that is the goal of the ISNI, and we will definitely try to help adopt that. And we are working behind the scenes to make sure that even if it's not properly sent from the distributor, that we are at least adding it on after the fact.
Awesome. Our next question, I do believe you answered during the presentation, based on what you were talking about with Jay's playlist being updated. But do changes and fixes in the artist data on Muso have an impact outside of the platform, for example, with DSPs?
Yes. So we this will flow directly. Let's see where I have it. To our data customers. So anybody that is consuming our feed, both API or the data feed, we can only have one major DSP, which is a Napster that is directly taking our credit information. So if you were to change something on Muso, it would reflect properly on Napster. We are working with more partnerships. We are working with Music Story, who is helping us getting these credits in all the DSPs, but also CMOs like Sound Exchange, or hopefully BMI and ASCAP. But really, having a platform where you can make all of these changes, and those changes have to flow to to the places that have a heavy impact on somebody's life, like a CMO, but also the DSPs as well.
And it looks like you answered some of our early other questions too about working with PROs, CMOs, and DSPs to kind of deliver this updated data. So a couple of questions about that as well, but it sounds like in that answer you kind of touched on some of that. Another question is a hypothetical here. What happens if you log into the Muso.AI platform and you see 0 for all credits?
Yep. This happens if on the source they haven't attributed a proper identifier to you. So typically what happens if your information is sent to, say, a DSP or a label or any of the sources that we would to ingest, they will assign a number for you, and then hopefully more credits show up on that. In some cases, they don't do that. I don't know why they don't do that, but it's a blank profile essentially. So like if they share the industry data with us, we also have a blank profile for you. But what will happen, and let me bring this up, is we will have a case like this. So it's not like you don't have any credits, but there are duplicates for you that we can merge on our end to or reflect the accurate stuff. So the 0 credits part is due to a fault on the source. We bring it in, but we can help you solve all of that.
Another question here. This may be our last one. A couple of folks wrote in about partnerships and brand ambassadorship. Would love to pass that information on to you. A lot of folks excited about what Muso is doing here, understandably. So we'll make sure that you get connected over here with Kyran and the Muso team, folks. Thank you for writing in about that. One more question here too. Will you populate a user profile with ISRCs and ISWCs in the future?
Yes, the ISRCs are already completely populated. So any single track that you were to see, even on J's, every single one of these has the proper ISRCs. And in some cases, since we're ingesting the publishing data, we'll also have the correct ISWCs. And so this is on a basic seeding of the platform. We have everything. So even if we are changing credits, we are doing this on the ISRC level so that it can very easily be shared with any of the data customers. And we also want to do this for the songwriters on the ISWC level. We have to mainly focus on the ISRC level, the recording side of it. But very soon, probably 6 months to 9 months, we will have a way to contribute to the ISWC as well, where we will be working with the MLC data feed to make sure that we have the proper linkages. And when changes are happening on one of the ISRCs that has the same work, that they are reflected on both.
Great. It looks like we're coming to the end of our questions. Folks, a couple of folks wrote in about recording of this webinar. This webinar has been recorded. It'll be posted to Music Biz's website for future viewing shortly before the end of the day. And like I said, I will make sure that the Muso team has all of the Q&A because there's a couple of follow-ups here on some stuff that folks were interested in. So I'll drop that link in the chat for anybody who's looking for that recording. And again, as we're wrapping up here, Kyran, thank you so much for sharing your time and your talent with us. This is a really exciting developments here. And like I said, folks here who attended today are super stoked on what you're doing. So thank you all for attending today. We really do appreciate your time. And we hope to welcome you to the next Music Biz webinar down the road. Thank you again, Kyran.
Thank you.
Everyone, take care. See you at the next webinar.